Hi pals, it's me, Artie, there and pronouns only. This week's video is another video based on something I saw a while back and just kind of saved. Saved for another time to think about and talk about here. I saw this post a while back. I don't remember exactly what the rest of the post actually said. I only saved 3 screenshots from it. I just saved them to remind myself to come back to this idea. But I saw it on Instagram and it was Madison who posted it. I think I just saw it in a friend's Instagram story. Attracted to a trans person, I don't know what to do. Copy Madison Beer. And it goes on to say, Madison Beer has cast a trans person as her alluring love interest in her new Sweet Relief music video. The video normalises and celebrates romantic attraction to trans people but doesn't rely on performative activism. It's exactly how trans love should be represented, but what defines a perfect depiction of trans love? One of the slides just said, Taylor Swift also positively depicted trans love in her music video for Lavender Haze earlier this year. And I personally do not listen to Madison Beer or Taylor Swift's music by choice. They are so popular, I'm sure I've heard their songs, you know. I have criticisms about Taylor Swift. I don't really know enough about Madison Beer, but generally pop music I have no qualms with. I'm not a music elitist. I think as long as it's something you enjoy, isn't harming anybody, slay. But I just found this similarity particularly interesting. Obviously, there's trans musicians who have trans people in their music videos, but many of them are not as popular or as palatable as Taylor Swift and Madison Beer to the mainstream general population. I did write a blog post a while ago about trans and non-binary musicians, mostly within alternative music, but not all of them, just because that's more my scene. If you do want some recommendations, as some examples, Zand, Ryan Casata, No Offense. My blog post is quite long, but obviously there's also loads of people that I don't really know of. Those are people that are up and coming, etc, etc. Trans artists usually have a smaller, more niche audience, which isn't a bad thing at all. I think in a lot of people actually prefer it that way, but it does mean that your reach is somewhat limited, even if you make online content like Ryan or Noah. And this is why I discussed the other year the diversity of Maths UK and how important mainstream representation is. This is kind of an extension from that, basically. Obviously in Maths UK we saw Ella last year, the first trans contestant who openly spoke about a lot of difficult things, as did her family, and she continues to act as an advocate and activist of trans lives, mainly in the UK. To have large mainstream music artists like Taylor Swift and Madison Beer include trans men as love interests in their music videos is something that I've not personally come across before. And this could have positive impacts on trans people for a few reasons. One of the main reasons is that larger music artists have more resources generally to protect themselves and deal with transphobic bullshit and backlash. We know certain people are more likely to be listened to on topics of marginalised people, and annoyingly it isn't usually the marginalised people themselves that are being listened to about their own needs and experiences. Often it is slim, white, rich, cis-het, non-disabled people, and usually more specifically men, are more likely to be listened to. Madison and Taylor get enough vitriol on the daily, I'm sure, just generally being in the public eye, both being women, and they may get an influx of specifically transphobic hate for including trans men in their music videos in this way, but it is something that they have the resources to deal with more than most marginalised people themselves. Plus it isn't a direct personal attack on them most of the time. It definitely could be spun that way, but the personal attacks I find personally wear me down more than arguing points on behalf of somebody else. This does take some of the attention away from trans people directly, which I think is almost always a good thing, but also it could do the opposite of highlighting those particular trans people. and giving people a more direct route to personally attack them. Yeah, unfortunately it can just kind of go either way. It depends on how lazy the transphobe is, I guess. I also think that the music videos are pretty subtle around the idea of love interest being trans. This also has its pros and cons too. Mainly, I think the pros are that when people realise or find out these roles were played by trans men, it could open up their point of view if they have little experience with trans people in real life. Trans people are not a monolith. Things that most marginalised people say. Trans people are as diverse as just the general population of the world. These two videos show very different looks and different kinds of, I don't know, partnerships and romantic relationships with trans men, but also the visual aesthetics of each trans man is quite different. But also it shows you that you may not actually be able to clock if someone is trans, which certain people think they can, but then continuously claim cis women as trans because of I don't know, slightly broader shoulders or being a little bit taller than their partner. Insert Daniel Radcliffe and his, at the time, pregnant fiance. Because she was taller than him, apparently she's trans. Some cons, however, to the not being able to clock trans people, the trans people being in the public eye, being more passing, is that basically it's the same point, to be honest. Seeing only passing trans people leads to certain expectations for and of trans people generally, when many people either do not want to or cannot pass. Both of those are valid. You don't have to do anything, to be honest, if you don't want to do it, and lots of people do not have the access if they do want to do it. Also, side note, I wish the YouTube videos for music videos had more info in the description of who was actually involved in production, in casting, etc. Who was featured on screen, and just more crediting, because it's not been very easy finding the details I need to talk about this in as much detail as I want to about both of these trans men. So the music videos themselves are also quite different from each other. Taylor Swift's video feels more like an established adult life and relationship, particularly as the trans, I have actor slash model, but I think he's mainly a model but also does music and some other things too. Laith Ashley is, I don't really know how to word this, so I put more developed, which is not really the right word I want there, but I feel you know what I mean. For one, he's older, he's got a full beard, is well into transition, has had top surgery, has developed muscle that can almost disguise top surgery scars if he has them, things like that. He's also an age-appropriate love interest for Taylor, as they are both born in the same year of 1989, which as well is kind of less common to see. I was going to say older trans people. Being in your 30s is not old. Me, as I'm about to hit my 30s. But a lot of statistics that go around is that the average age or lifespan of trans people is 30, 35. So we don't really see a lot of people 30 plus generally. He himself overall has a very impressive body of work as a trans model, TV personality, plus numerous other things he's done, including music like I mentioned earlier. Laith is also a trans man of colour, but the sources aren't great on that. He refers to himself as a person of colour in an interview, but doesn't specify his ethnicity. There's a few articles without sources that claim he is Dominican or generally Latino, but I couldn't find anything that actually clarified or specified. But he does identify himself as, or has done at least, as a trans man of colour, which is also, as we know, another layer to this. A lot of trans people we see are usually white. Moving on to Madison Beer's video, it's a lot more youthful. While she is 25, the video feels a bit more I don't know, I said originally late teens, early 20s, but actually re-looking at it, it reminds me a lot of when I was like a mid-teenager, the sort of like early 2000s time period. I'm pretty sure I had those glasses that she's wearing. The awful old digital cameras, taking photos with your gal pals in your bedroom, you know, like all of that was very familiar to me in my youth and childhood. And like the IMDb/Rolling Stones says it's like the ethos of MySpace era, and I'm like, where? These are just children in the early 2000s. Most of them couldn't even have MySpace. I'm too young. I was too young for MySpace. So how could Madison Beer at 25? You know, I didn't really get it. It's just they're just bringing back the early 2000s vibe. It doesn't have to be MySpace. Definitely isn't MySpace. It's just, yeah, mid-teens, being mid-teens in the early 2000s. But yeah, like everyone looks a little bit nerdier, not very trendy. Yeah, very unfashionable young teenagers in the 2000s. You know, I was there, I recognise it. The photos were terrible. I don't want to look at them either. You know, the bedroom group of girls getting dressed, taking photos before either like having a sleepover or like before going out to hang out with people. And then like to the just random, yeah, they were hanging out in someone's garden at one point, but then they were just like hanging around random places. I'm like, yeah, early 2000s teen culture was just, you had nowhere to go. I don't know where teenagers now go. Online. I mean, I was also online, but like, more online, question mark. What do you do if you're under the age of 18? What do you do? Also, why are you here? Not sure my content is appropriate, but I mean, possibly could be. I just swear a lot.
Radicalise the youth.
But yeah, like they're hanging around random fucking places with boys because there's like nothing to do anywhere, and some people's parents don't let boys come over, and like nowhere to go. You don't have any money. You've got to find ways to occupy yourself. And then like there's a pool scene, which is definitely very much definitely not the UK early 2000s vibe. We don't really have pools like that in the UK. And if we do, that's where the rich people live. I don't think I've ever seen an inbuilt like ground pool that was owned by someone and wasn't just like a public pool in the UK. That feels very American, but who knows, it could also be other places in the world that I just don't know enough about, you know? Because I mean, Scum had a very slay pool scene in season 3, but that pool was inside someone's house who was very rich, so still not the same vibe. Actually, mate, it's kind of a little bit the same vibe. Kind of a little bit. Madison, Beer, have you watched Scum? Slay. Yeah, so the only information that I could find on the actor in this one was basically through Madison Beer's Instagram. Because like I said, there's fuck all on the like music video itself. I couldn't find any kind of like music video version of IMDb that actually listed who was on screen. But like I also did find a behind the scenes video of the filming that kept referring to him as Frank. So at least I knew like what first name to be looking for. And like, yeah, he's another model, but he doesn't have a Wikipedia page at all, whereas at least the other guy did. Even if it wasn't that great, he has a very different aesthetic look compared to Leith. I've just how do you pronounce Leith? I think I assumed Leith, but now I'm questioning myself. Leith, so it's Leith.
Leith.
Okay, so I've been calling him Leith or something. I don't know. Pardon me, Leith. So yeah, compared to Leith, Frank is much slimmer. I didn't even put his full name on here. Never mind. I think I put it in later. Oh, I did. So Frank Eisenberg, that's his full name. So yeah, compared to Leith, Frank is much slimmer, a more youthful look. Doesn't have really much / any facial hair. Has kind of more of a younger, messy, I don't know, skater boy kind of hair vibe. Like even looking through his Instagram, whereas like Leith is a bit more like, I don't want to necessarily say like well groomed, because I'm not saying the other person isn't well groomed. It's just a different kind of like personal regime, you know. But yeah, he looks a bit more put together, I guess, a bit more clean cut kind of vibe. Whereas yeah, Frank kind of does look like that gangly teenage boy vibe that I think the video was going for. I am guessing that he is around the same age as Madison Beer based on who he's friends with, who he's been dating, and looking at him. He is also Jewish Polish, and talks more on this on his Instagram, but particularly in some posts about his grandfather. However, he has made some biphobic comments. So as a bi-trans person, bisexual doesn't inherently exclude trans people. It's down to the individual to decide what bisexuality means to them more specifically.
I mean, we literally had this conversation in the Maths UK video last year, the first one, because Nathaniel, was that his name, was pansexual and actually didn't want to date trans people. And he sat there and spoke about how pansexuality is not related to gender and whatever. So, you know, it's less about what even like the definitions actually say and a lot more to do with what people are saying. And even then, Nathaniel literally said the right thing, but then changed his mind.
Bi means two or more, not just two, like we're always like taught in Pride 101. You know, like this is a really old argument that just continually comes up because people like to be really pedantic about semantics. Yeah, so like I really don't care to continue to talk about that for much longer because it's not the point of the video. But also, yeah, I just wanted to note it. Plus, Madison Beer literally is a bisexual. So maybe he's only biphobic when he's not being paid. I don't know. Like maybe he has like learned, because this was a while ago now. I'm always hopeful that people will learn from their shitty takes. Like I said, the video is more of a youthful will they won't they, yearning, pining before a relationship actually starts, and like stealing secret moments together away from your friends. Both videos have very different themes and vibes. There is zero emphasis on the love interest being trans. Media is very hyper focused on trans women, especially trans women of colour, and also many non-binary people, usually white and thin, get a lot of attention in Western media, mainly in America, not so much the UK, because whilst they are trans, I'm talking about the non-binary people, they still often fit a certain beauty standard that's more palatable than trans women to the mainstream media. And then yeah, because of all that and other reasons too as well, we kind of just don't really notice or know when trans men are on our screens at times. The main trans man I can personally think of is Elliot Page, but also he hasn't really done a lot of acting since coming out. I'm pretty sure he finished the Umbrella Academy and then kind of went into more of like a behind the scenes role, which I do also think is good. I think he's doing a lot more work to include like trans and queer people more behind the scenes and in front of the camera, because he has a lot of privilege because of his previous massive career, and being white and thin and conventionally attractive and having a lot of money. I respect people who use their privilege to further things, you know? Obviously there's like many more trans men working in media and specifically as actors, but they're often in stereotypical roles for trans people, and not really well handled, and or they're not often in productions with enough steam like behind them to shoot them into more of like a mainstream media like eye. You know, think about all of the Netflix shows that have been cancelled after 1 or 2 seasons for literally no reason. And then looking at my own videos on media that I've covered shows that I've included trans women, queer gender non-conforming women, straight gender non-conforming women, non-binary characters and actors, both white and people of colour, queer cis men, but trans men, like I don't know, literally nowhere. Haven't seen one. You know, even in my own personal viewing that I haven't made videos on, either because like I don't have anything to say, or there's like a bit too much work to do to say something about them, or I just can't be asked at the moment. I really couldn't name you a trans man, a character or actor, particularly in a main role, off the top of my head. I think it's really interesting. The trans men I can think of are either more self-made, so like via social media of some form, like, no offense, Ryan Casata, Chellaman, or transitioned after having a massive career as a cis person, like Elliot Page, or are in things I just have no interest in watching, like Star Trek with Ian Alexander, or in British soaps like Emmerdale, like Ash Missiano. Sorry, like I knew as soon as I saw that last name, I had no hope. Or they don't speak, or they're like such a major side character, kind of like in these music videos. They don't speak because it's a music video, as well as like some adverts too. I am also thinking about doing a video down the line on adverts that do include and star trans people, mainly because of like recently seeing the newer E45 adverts that they have been putting out for a little while. Also, E45 is one of the few like brands that actually puts funding into trans research, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I saw their advert the other day. I was like, oh, that's actually like a really nice advert. Other than that, I can't really think of any that I've actually seen. Obviously, there was the whole like Dylan something with the beer that became viral because of transphobes. But yeah, reading an article for this video, there are so many other shows that I have seen with trans characters, trans men characters, or trans men actors in, but like they were so long ago, are shows that I don't think I have much to say on. You know, like there was one that Elliot Page was in before he transitioned. I can't remember the Tales of something. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina has a trans man character, but I think the actor is non-binary. Then Good Girls obviously as well has a trans boy, like one of the main characters' son. So again, a very, very side characters. And like apparently Grey's Anatomy also has regular trans men actors characters in. And I just don't believe you, unless like that's a really recent thing, which I don't think it was. I think this article was from 2019. Who are you talking about?
Who are you talking about?
Because like I know they have had a non-binary character actor on there for a while now who was dating Amelia Shepherd, and like one of the past cast members now identifies as non-binary, Sarah Ramirez. And then like from a different show, New Amsterdam, they also had a very, very, very side trans character who like barely spoke. Like the few others I can think of, they're all like the side characters at best. I don't know what this article was saying, where they were like, yeah, Grey's Anatomy has loads of trans people. Where?
Where?
And then yeah, like UK media, it's not great. Even Casualty, I found, has like a habit of any queer characters are never there for long, and that included the one non-binary character they had. And I don't think they've had a series regular who was a trans man or a trans woman, to be honest. I think they've only ever had the one non-binary character who's not on there anymore, and then obviously Patience, who are usually there for one, maybe 2 episodes. Like I wouldn't, you know. Like I say, in every media video, big disclaimer always is that no representation is perfect, as it will not reflect everyone's experience or has heavy cis involvement. But that also doesn't negate some of the positives from it too, including the fact that people feel seen and represented, even if it is stereotypical. I saw a really good tweet the other day that was mainly for autism, but like the people who argue about like against the autism criteria being like a legitimate version of autism are also arguing against the people who fit that criteria exactly. And that's kind of how I feel about media representation generally, and stereotypes. Like, yes, stereotypes do suck for a lot of us. However, they do fit some people. So yeah, like in the grand scheme of things, it is just, I'm so uncomfortable. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it is just a couple of music videos featuring basically some dudes who happen to be trans. But it is normalizing trans men as love interests and legitimate partners, especially of like the typical heroines we see in TV shows and films and such, i.e., slim, usually white women. I say usually because I know Madison Beer may not be like strictly white. I've seen confirmed sources of her being Ashkenazi Jewish, but unconfirmed about her also having Moroccan roots and whether those Moroccan roots are technically white or not. You know, things that I, as a white person, but also just generally, I like cannot comment on and cannot comprehend this argument. So yeah, either way, I'm sure she has some experience of being racialized in some form. I just don't know how accurate calling her white is. You know, that's basically the gist. I don't want to just call her white and find out she's not, you know. Like I said, I don't know these people. I don't listen to or stan Taylor Swift or Madison Beer. Most of what I know of Taylor Swift is against my own will, and all I know about Madison Beer is for this video. So yes, trans men are often not seen as an option in real life and in media. Romanticizing them in this way, I feel like, is a step. I don't know whether that's a good or a bad step generally, but I think a good step. So I'll just say it's a step. We're going somewhere with this, you know. Not very far, because it's not that big of a statement to just hire some trans people, particularly from such big names like Taylor Swift and Madison Beer. You know, obviously this is very bare minimum stuff, right? That's why I have criticisms about mainly Taylor Swift. Like I said, I know more about her generally because it's all been against my will, thanks Twitter. But like this is not like a revolutionary act to just hire some trans men to be your pretend boyfriend for a video, basically. However, I think it's still nice and useful, right? It's helping to carve out some space for trans men, trans people in general, in media, in storytelling. But as well, because these two have such large audiences, it'll be going out to a very different group of people than like what, you know, me and my trans friends are in, for example. So yeah, they are putting this idea that trans men are and can be a legitimate option of like a lover or a partner to this much bigger audience of people who maybe don't have a lot of experience or knowledge around trans people generally, people who might see sexuality a little bit more strictly than it maybe necessarily is. Hopefully this will have an impact on their audiences, hopefully good, but also I think it could shake up some of the more hesitant supporters of these women. And like, I think people in the arts in general have the same hope across marginalized communities, really, that seeing more of us on screen in varied stories and varied characters could help people who don't know anything or much about us to be more compassionate and open their minds a little more by providing them with media that can help answer maybe some of their questions, or maybe just completely ignore those things, or even prove their point of view of trans people wrong without it all being on like real life marginalized people's shoulders doing all that work for no pay. At least these people in, you know, acting in plays, shows, films, podcasts, you know, whatever mode are being paid to depict these stories that anybody can access. Too bad streaming has destroyed TV's ability to actually pay actors and writers a decent paycheck. We are at a point where we're basically paying for shittier version of cable TV, and I said that to my mum last night because Why are we paying for all these different streaming subscriptions when they all have adverts now and most of them don't fucking work? And everything I want to watch gets fucking cancelled or deleted. Fuck off. I mean, whilst I wanted to end the video on that sort of like positive note of, you know, people working in creative fields and media hope that it will help make people hate trans people less. There's a lot of things that have shown me that that is not necessarily true. It is definitely true for some people, but for a lot of people it is not true at all. And I think one of the biggest obvious like factors of that is the Hunger Games, I guess, and how everyone was like on Katniss's side, on the rebellion side in the Hunger Games until Gaza and Palestine. Anyway, Donald What's-His-Face died recently and he was very anti-war, so you should probably go and do some things to help the people in Gaza. Anyway, that's the end of my video. Don't forget to support my work, my channel. Liking, watching, subscribing, commenting and sharing all really helps. Let me know if there's anything else in particular that I've mentioned that you'd like to see me expand on more. What do you think of these music videos? Have you seen them? Are you gonna have a look at them? I bet they're not even like donating any money. You know, they're not donating any money, are they? Oh yeah, I also re-dyed my hair blue because my purple toner kept sticking to certain parts of the blonde and it was pissing me off because it wasn't coming out and then wasn't toning the rest of them. So I was like, I'm going back to blue. So here we are, bitch. And yeah, like I said, I have some sources for some of the things I was saying. I couldn't find a lot of anything really, but there are some good articles generally about trans men, trans masc people. So yeah, that's the end of my video and I will see you next week. Bye.